I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long week while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be alone. Yeah, yes, I hope and pray that I'll be, but today I'm just with you.
Good morning, this is Bill Scher on the Liberal Oasis radio show. Another Saturday morning, another week of political intensity. This may have been the week that Barack Obama breaks the political deadlock and takes a firm grip on the potential nomination. Although I think I've said this before. I think I've been wrong before. But I think we're getting to the point where a lot of rank and file Democratic voters are terrified of a deadlocked convention. And I think if you look at polling data, there's a minority in both camps that really dislikes the other candidate, but the broad majority of Democratic voters like them both. And I've always surmised from the beginning that if one candidate really got a leg up, there would be a bandwagon effect around that candidate. I happen to think it was going to happen last month. That was clearly wrong, but we may be at that point where it's going to happen. Although obviously Senator Clinton is doing everything she can to stoke doubts about Obama and prevent that freight runaway train from leaving the station. There's always some indications that superdelegates that are in her corner, the superdelegates are folks who are elected congresspeople, party elders, governors, DNC members who have votes at the convention, like the elected delegates out of this primary process have. Some of the superdelegates that publicly pledged to Clinton are starting to back away, moving to be uncommitted, even moving to the Obama camp. So she cannot expect that is any kind of firewall for her if she comes up short in the delegate count out of the primary process. And later in the broadcast, we're going to be talking to Jennifer Nix, who is part of a very exciting internet project, the Superdelegate Transparency Project, so the public can actually know what is up with this whole superdelegate component to the process. But one of the reasons why I think that Obama is getting a leg up at this point, has a bit of a lead in the delegate count, popular vote count, etc., is the lingering doubt about him is that he's not experienced enough, he's not deep enough on policy substance, too much style and flash. But I think he is addressing those doubts to the point where those criticisms from the Clinton campaign aren't sticking. And this is an example of that, I think. One of the things that we see them on the stump, we see them give speeches, we see them give press conferences sometimes, and we see them in debates. And obviously on the stump, I think Obama clearly has the leg up. In debates, you certainly could argue that Clinton has the leg up, that her fluency in talking policy really shines there, and you don't really see that in Obama. It can feed this notion that he lacks substance. But there's another area where they both speak that most people don't see, and that is in editorial board meetings. When they go from state to state, they will meet with editorial boards trying to get their endorsement, the newspaper's endorsement. And it's a different format. I brought a couple clips with me from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel editorial boards, and they both talked about poverty. I want to play, these are a bit long for radio, but we're going to play them anyway. That's the kind of show this is. This is Hillary Clinton talking about how she would address poverty to the Journal-Sentinel editorial board.
Well, I am in favor of providing opportunity for people again, which is backed up by real commitments to a safety net and to 21st century solutions that will give people a chance to be lifted out of poverty. During the 1990s, more people were lifted out of poverty than at any time in America's recent history. And it was done the old-fashioned way. It was done through the creation of 22.7 million new jobs, through rising incomes, through a change in tax policy that extended the earned income tax credit so that more people who were bringing home low wages got to keep those wages and were exempt from the federal income tax. I think that we can get back to doing what works. I would extend even further the earned income tax credit, continue to raise the minimum wage, look for new sources of job creation, like clean, renewable energy, which I believe could see at least 5 million new jobs created over the next 10 years in both the inner cities and in rural areas.
Solid argument. She's speaking there on a conference call with the editorial board because she was campaigning, I believe, in Ohio that day. But she was able to look at the successes of the Clinton administration in which she served as both First Lady and in some aspects in policy. Say, this is what we did that worked, and here is how I would build on that success going forward. Perfectly solid and respectable argument. Here is Barack Obama answering the same question, how he would address poverty, to the Journal-Sentinel editorial board.
The question is, how do we create ladders of success and opportunity for all Americans? And combines an effort to go at the hardcore unemployed and the hardcore impoverished with a strategy to strengthen the middle class, strengthen the working class, because the lines between those two things are often blurred, especially after welfare reform, where everybody theoretically is working, but a whole bunch of folks are poor. Now, I've got a fairly comprehensive agenda that starts with making work pay by expanding the earned income tax credit, making sure that some of the costs associated with being a working parent, like child care, that we expand those credits. I mentioned education, which has to be central, so emphasizing early childhood education in particular, I think, as a way of closing the achievement gap is very important. Our kids are falling behind before they start school. There's a vocabulary gap, a conceptual gap that kids have. If we don't close that by the time they're 3 or 4, it's harder for them to catch up. It's not impossible, but it's much harder for them to catch up. So we've got to invest there, and I propose $18 billion in new spending around that, as well as teacher training.
Now, it seems to me that their approaches are very similar. And there are certain things that Clinton mentioned, like green-collar jobs, that Obama mentioned later in that thing. There are things that Obama mentioned as far as education is concerned that Clinton also mentions in other forums. So the basic policy approaches are the same. And I think the quality of their policy knowledge in those clips shows to be similar as well. And so it's getting harder and harder as the more and more you see Obama, the more and more forums you see him in. I think he is getting better at weaving in more policy into his rousing stump speeches to try to allay those concerns. It's getting harder and harder to make the case that you may like this guy in the stump, but he doesn't have the chops to be president.